Hello everybody, welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm making salt roasted fish with a lovely salad, and I'm starting off by separating the 2 eggs. I only need the egg whites, and I'm setting aside the egg yolks into another bowl, and I'm going to use them way later. This fish is super easy to make. It needs quite a couple of ingredients, but it's very lovely and well, like I said, very easy to make. And now, after the days of festivities with a lot of meat and everything, this is actually the perfect recipe to, well, slow down a bit maybe. I'm also making a pear, apple and chicory salad with a creamy blue cheese dressing with it. So once the fish is in the oven, I'm going to take care of the salad. It takes quite a while to separate the eggs, but I'm going slow on purpose not to destroy that very thin skin around the yolks and have everything mixed up. So once I have my eggs separated, I'm going to go out of frame, unfortunately, because the cable of my mixer isn't that long, but you need to beat the eggs so that they're having a medium peak. Don't go all the way. Once that's done, I'm adding all of the 4 kilos of salt in the biggest bowl that I have, and you see this is, well, not such a big bowl, but I'm gonna manage. 4 kilos seems a lot, and it sounds like the fish is going to be too salty to eat, but that's not the case for as long as the skin of the fish is intact. That's why you only can do that with a whole fish, not with a pre-fillet cut kind of fish. And I'm taking quite coarse grained salt here, because it makes it way easier to have a crust in the end. And you want to have the salt slightly damp, not really wet. So besides adding the egg whites in a couple of seconds, I'm also going to add a tiny bit of normal water, just tap water. I'm using that. And that helps the crust form, but not have it be too thick or too hard in the end once you take it out of the oven. So now that I have the salt in place, I'm adding all of the remaining ingredients to make the crust. And I'm sorry for being in the frame, but I had a tiny glare on my salt, so I had to, well, make sure that everything's fine. So here's the medium hard egg white, and I'm just mixing it under the salt as well as the tap water. So now that that's done, I'm taking the biggest roasting pan that I have, and I'm putting in that salt mixture onto the bottom, and I'm going for maybe a centimeter thick. And while I do that all, I'm having my oven preheated to 200 degrees Celsius. So I'm just filling the salt in and then I'm tapping it down, making sure that I have a solid layer on the bottom. Then I put it aside and I'm taking care of my fish. So this is fresh fish that I bought this morning in the supermarket. It's very, very fresh one, and I took salmonid. I'm just taking the fishes out of the bags and then I'm cleaning it with water and drying it up with paper towels. You have to make sure that the fish is really, really fresh and that you have skin that is not cut anywhere. And again, it's only doable with a complete fish. And these are about 550 grams per piece. Once the fishies are cleaned and look lovely and are dried up with my paper towels, I'm adding the herbs to the stomach, and that prevents the salt from creeping into the fish and making the fish, well, not eatable, to say it frankly. And I'm using rosemary and thyme here, which are lovely winter herbs. And you have to be careful with the rosemary, don't have too much in it, because it has a very, very strong flavor. And I'm using 1 twig of rosemary per fish plus 2 twigs of thyme. Just put it into the stomach of the fishy and make sure that, well, you pretty much close the fish here. And I just remember I took oregano because they didn't have time at the supermarket that day. So you see, I recorded or I voiced it over a couple of days after I actually cooked the dinner. So oregano works as well, but the original recipe requests or recommends, I should say, thyme. And then I'm taking a bit of olive oil, maybe like 5 tablespoons in total, and I'm rubbing the fish on both sides with the olive oil before I put those 2 fishies onto the first layer of salt that I had in my roasting pan. Once I have the fish in the pan, I'm distributing the rest of the salt evenly across the fish and make sure that the surface is solid. So I'm going to use the techniques from early days in my childhood where you sit in a sandbox and you make castles. So that's pretty much the same technique, just tap on lightly to make sure that you have a solid layer of salt before you put the fish in the oven. So while the fish is in the oven, and for these 2 500-gram fishies, it takes about 30 minutes, maybe 35. If you have 1 big fish, you have to add 10 minutes per 500 gram that are over the 550 mark. So while the fish is in the oven, I'm preparing the salad, and I'm starting with the dressing. This is the blue cheese that I'm using here, and I need about 50 grams that I'm going to cut into smaller pieces. And then I'm going to add the creme fraiche, and I'm just eyeballing the amount. So I'm cutting the cheese into tiny pieces, which makes it easier to mix later. Also, I would recommend a food processor or a smoothie blender machine here, but you can also do it by hand, which just takes a bit longer, and the cheese is not as smooth and liquid as it could be with a blender. But I guess both of that is fine. So before I mix everything together, I'm adding 5 tablespoons of olive oil, 4 tablespoons of cider vinegar, and 6 tablespoons of water. And then if you don't use a blender, just smush the cream cheese or the cheeses into the cream and get those parts broken up as best you can. But again, I'm using a smoothie blender here, and that makes things just way more easy. Unfortunately, out of frame, just because, like again, my cable is just not long enough. And I'm using 3 heads of chicory, just because 2 of them are a bit smaller and they came in this pack of 3, so it's okay to have 1 more. Although one of those bigger ones is pretty much enough for 1 person, especially when you have something with the salad. So I'm washing those chicory heads and cutting or taking away all of the outer leaves. I'm not going to use them. And once they are washed, I'm just going to break the leaves of the stem. After that's done, I'm going to cut a pear and an apple into tiny pieces, taking out the core, of course. You don't want to eat that. Now that I have all of my ingredients, except for the herbs, cut and prepared, I can plate the salad up already. I'm cutting the herbs, and I do have tarragon here, and these couple of sprigs are just enough for both plates, and it has like a lemony taste which fits perfectly with the salad and with the fish as well, so that's a lovely combination. I'm just ripping off the leaves and then I'm cutting them into tiny pieces. After I distributed the tarragon, I'm adding the dressing already, and I'm going with a tablespoon so that it's not too soggy and that everything doesn't shrink together, because there's still a couple of minutes left for the fish to in the oven. But the apple and the pear would get brown if I would just leave it like that. So the acid from the vinegar in the dressing actually prevents that from happening, which is just nicer to the eye. And well, the eye is also, well, eating dinner at the table, so it has to look nice, right? Once the fish is done, I'm taking it out of the oven and let it rest for 8 to 10 minutes. And then I'm I'm scraping away all of the salt on top. And the surface, the upper surface, is really, really hard and solid, so I have to keep bashing and getting one start in the salt crust, and then it gets away, peels away quite easily. So I'm taking the fish out of the crust, scooping the excess salt away, and then I'm just cutting the fillets from the fish, making sure that I don't have any bones in there, or not more than I have to have, and then I'm just distributing the meat to the plates. So that's the recipe for today. I hope you give it a try. It's, again, really, really lovely. It's a nice light dinner that you can, well, I guess now enjoy after the holidays, where we probably all had a lot of food, maybe overate once or twice. And thank you very much for watching. Check out the playlist of crEATe. There's lots of lovely recipes coming up, and a couple of them already there. I'm going to see you next Wednesday with a new recipe. Take good care. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe. Thank you.